Hi there, I'm Mr. Mitchell, and I welcome you to my music studio. This is a room in the house. I get to make some music, and I've been spending a lot of time in here during these last couple of months just creating and having fun with music, and I welcome you to it. I am the band teacher for Holy Trinity Catholic School Division, specifically for the elementary schools. I know you've got a lot of questions about band, and that's why you're watching this video, and I hope to answer some of those questions. This video will be primarily about the different instruments in the band, and we'll set up some other videos with questions to some other answers about band. But you're probably wondering, what is band? Well, band is learning, practicing, and performing music. We learn to read music and play an instrument, and it is awesome. So who is band for? Band is for everyone. Everyone. The band program runs from grade 6 all the way up to grade 12. And then of course, if you move on to university, you can play band there. Also, there are opportunities to play band instruments for the rest of your life. It's just an amazing thing to get into. And of course, learning a band instrument helps you learn other instruments too. So what instruments do we teach in band? Well, the modern day concert band has its origins in the turn of the century, in the turn of the last century, army band. Think of the Salvation Army bands. These instruments needed to be loud, so you could hear them coming down the street or over the hill, but they needed to be loud. So they picked instruments that could play both soft and loud. They also needed instruments that were portable, right? So I'm sorry, pianos. There are no pianos in concert bands, mostly because you can't carry them down a street. The instruments we play are categorized into 3 groups of instruments. Matter of fact, 4, and we're going to talk about the 4th one a little later. But I will describe for you the instrument families, and we're going to do a little bit of science along the way, because music is sound. And so we should be pretty expert at sound. We want to know where sound comes from, what creates the sound. And spoiler alert, sound comes from something that is vibrating. So with each instrument, I'd like to talk a little bit, very briefly, about what is vibrating to create that sound, okay? So we're going to start with the woodwind family, all right? So what instruments are in the woodwind family? Well, we've got flute, clarinet, the saxophones, and plus we've got a bassoon and an oboe. Bassoon and oboe, those are more for upper grades, or if you do want to start on bassoon or oboe in grade 6, I would highly recommend taking some private lessons, as those instruments are a little more involved with the care and the technique. But we will demonstrate today for you the flute, the clarinet, the saxophone, okay? So I have a special guest today to demonstrate the flute, Mr. Mitchell. Hey, I'm Mr. Mitchell, but this is also Mr. Mitchell, and he happens to live in my house because we're related. So Mr. Mitchell is a great flute player. So I'm going to get him over here in a second. He's going to play you some flute stuff and demonstrate the instrument. So here, just give me 1 sec. Let me call him over. Aiden!
Hi, I'm Mr. Mitchell. I'm Aiden Mitchell. I'm Mr. Mitchell's son. So that's that. I'm a flute player. I've been playing since I was in grade 6. I work with Mr. Mitchell. I'm the band aid. I help him with things that have to do with band. I like to help kids learn how to play their instruments. So anyway, my instrument is the flute, and so I'm going to just tell you how to make a sound on it. You'll notice that it's just a tube with a hole and a sort of a plate on there where you put your face. So it's kind of like if you've ever blown air across the top of a pop bottle and made that sort of humming sound. It's the same idea, it's a smaller hole. So if you take I'll just go like this. So yeah, you just put it right up your face, kind of pout over the hole, like you're crying because you're a sad flute player. And then you just make a really small hole with your face, and then you blow. Pretty simple. Flute is actually one of the harder instruments to learn because it wastes so much air. So right off the bat, you're probably not going to be making the best sound, but that's okay, because once you do make a good sound, you've got it forever. And then when you have the whole flute together, there's a million buttons and keys and legs and arms and holes, and you make different sounds by pressing these down. So the flute can be really low, it can also be really high. Yeah. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's also really nice because it's small. The case fits in your backpack, so if you don't want to lug around a big tuba like that guy, that guy. So yeah, again, I'm Mr. Mitchell on the Band-Aid, and that's how you make a sound on the flute, and I'll see you next year.
All right, thank you, Aiden. That was awesome. And next with the Woodwinds, I have this guy. This is the clarinet, and the clarinet has this. It's called a reed. The reed is a very skinny piece of wood. It's actually cane, and I take this reed, I make sure it's nice and moist. I attach it to the clarinet, tighten the screws. The clarinet also can play really high. And all kinds of neat things with the clarinet. Now, I told you I would talk about how the sound is made, the source of the sound. So with the clarinet, it is this reed. When I blow into the mouthpiece, it causes that reed to vibrate really, really, really quickly, and that's where the sound comes from. The rest of the instrument just makes it louder and also makes different notes. By covering holes, we make the instrument longer and shorter, but the sound all comes from this guy. Now, there's another instrument that's very similar in how the sound is made, and that's this guy, the saxophone. Saxophone also has a reed, which I want to make sure is nice and moist. Saxophone, a little bigger. It's made out of brass. Now that doesn't make it part of the brass family, and I'll explain why a little later. But it is definitely a woodwind. Hey, the reed is wood, so that could be why it's a woodwind. Same idea. Reed into the mouthpiece. And if any of this looks tricky or confusing, don't worry about it. I will teach you everything you need to know. I'll show you what all the buttons are for and everything. And we only start with a few of the buttons, so we don't need all these extra keys and whatnot. Let's see if I can make a sound. Oh yes, here we go. Saxophone. Source of sound, vibrating reed. Same as the clarinet. Okay? Right on. We also have a larger saxophone called the tenor saxophone. It's a little bigger, a little heavier, the case is bigger, but if you think you can handle a bigger case, you're not going to complain, maybe you want to try the tenor, but most of my grade 6s would start on an alto saxophone. There are bigger saxophones, but we'll start with those two. So that wraps up the woodwind family. We'll come right back. Oh, I didn't talk about one thing. So what's the source of sound with the flute? What's vibrating? Man, it all looks very metal, very rigid. Is there something that's wiggling or vibrating? No. What's actually vibrating is the air. The air column that's inside the flute is vibrating. It's hard to explain, but you might have experienced this phenomenon. Have you ever been in a car that's driving along the street or driving along the highway, and then someone rolls one of the windows down, and all of a sudden there's this like sound, and then like mom and dad is like, close the window, I hate that noise. Anyways, what's happening is that the air is, when you open that window, the air is trying to rush in, and then all of a sudden there's too much air in the car, so then the air wants to kind of push out, but then there's too little air in the car, so then the air rushes back in, pushes back out, back in, out, the pressure goes high, low, high, low, high, low, high, low, high, low, really fast. Well, that's exactly what's happening on the inside of this flute, but even faster, like so fast. And that's why we can hear such high notes, okay? All right, let's go on to the brass. So the brass family, well, why are they called brass instruments? Well, they're made of brass. Most of them are, at least. Most of them are made of brass. But that's not even what makes them a brass instrument. The determining factor of an instrument, of either being part of the brass family or the woodwind family, the number one thing is, if you do this with your lips, then you must be playing a brass instrument, okay? So, here is a trumpet. Trumpet has a mouthpiece. Mouthpiece is just something to put on my face, and it helps to direct the sound of this. It's called a buzz. I'm buzzing my lips, so I put this mouthpiece on my face. That's the sound. That is the source of the sound. The rest of this just makes it louder and makes it sound prettier. So I put the mouthpiece into the trumpet. The trumpet, nice and compact, plays lots of melodies. Brass instrument. Let me get another brass instrument. Trombone. I might stand up for this one. It's kind of a bigger instrument. So this is the trombone. It's a brass instrument because I still have to go. Still has a mouthpiece that I go into. So it must be a brass instrument. But this time it gets a lower sound than the trumpet. And instead of changing valves to change the note, I move the slide in and out. Watch out. Trombone, great instrument. Now, there's one instrument I don't have at home right now. It's called the euphonium. And the euphonium, well, it looks like this, but shrunk down. It's a little bit smaller. And we start kids on euphonium in grade 6 because, well, this tuba is big and heavy, and you probably don't want to carry this thing home and back to school every week. So euphonium is smaller, it's about half the size, it's lighter, but it has the same mouthpiece as a trombone. So you do the buzz, but instead of moving the slide in and out, you push the valves to give different notes. But I thought since I have a tuba here at home, I may as well play it for you. Here's the tuba. Ooh, I could play some VeggieTales. So that's the tuba. All right, one other brass instrument is the French horn. This is the French horn. Look at that beautiful thing. The French horn is a brass instrument, mouthpiece just like a trumpet, buzz just like a trumpet, and then of course the rest of the instrument just amplifies the sound, makes it louder, but also makes it sound much better. And unique to the French horn is this big bell, and I actually put my hand in the bell somewhat. I don't block off the sound, but I do put my hand in there somewhat to help with that French horn sound. Beautiful instrument, brass instrument, and you can definitely do French horn in grade 6, although I do recommend French horn to those students who have had some previous musical training. You need to have a pretty good musical ear to play the French horn, and so if you've taken some lessons before, then you would be a great candidate for French horn in grade 6. Otherwise, I would say, hey, if you're interested in this beautiful thing, start on the trumpet in grade 6, and then in grade 7 we can switch you up to this French horn. French horn, brass instrument. And that rounds out the brass family of instruments. So remember, brass family, any instrument that you need to do this. There is that source of sound. And woodwinds, basically any other instrument that uses air that you don't do the buzz, okay? All right, now woodwinds, I did miss a couple of instruments. The oboe and the bassoon, I don't have those at home, but if you search them out on YouTube or watch that other instrument demonstration video that I'll link to you, there's some fantastic players of all of these instruments, and you should definitely watch that video as well. Now, brass, woodwinds, what are the other instruments that I haven't covered yet? Well, I do allow one bass player every year in grade 6, one electric bass player, because you can't have too many bass players in a band or else it just goes like, oh, super loud, okay? So, if you want to try bass, that might be a good choice for you. Then the only other thing left is percussion. Percussion is stuff that you hit. So last we have the percussion family of instruments. And again, percussion is anything you hit. In grade 6, we will focus mainly on snare drum and bells. These lovely things. And bells, we can play melody. We can't play melody with a snare drum, but we can sure play it on the bells. And what should I play? Oh dear. I don't have the proper mallets and I apologize. Beautiful. So those are the instruments of the band that we do in grade 6. And then of course, we can expand it to some other instruments later on. Saxophones, you can try the Barry sax, which is a big saxophone. And sometimes we need people to play the bass clarinet, which is another expansion instrument. And once you learn one instrument really well and you've done the work, then picking up a second and a third instrument is a lot easier. For myself, I started on trombone. And then also I just happened to be learning guitar at the same time in church. And then in high school I picked up the bass. And then now that I'm teaching elementary band, I bring a different instrument to a class every day. And I'm getting pretty good at those two. But mainly trombone and bass would be my main instruments. But I thought it'd be fun to whip you up a little song here with some of the band instruments. So I hope you enjoy. And if you have any questions at all, you can email me, and my email address will be all over the place in emails, and if you can't find it, then just ask your student's homeroom teacher for my email and I will answer any questions that you have, okay? But for today, instruments, I hope that was good, and I hope you have a great day and a great week, and we'll see you later. Enjoy the little song.